You are listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report, episode number 218.3, our Major League Baseball season preview with sports reporter, author Josh Sigler, and my uncle Paul Tipton, the biggest baseball fan I know, a man who taught me much about the game in his Central Indiana Sports Report debut. I hope the first of many.
You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengelt.
Welcome back to the Central Indiana Sports Report. Josh Sigler's starting to become a regular guest, and we love that. And for the first time, my favorite guest, maybe to date, except for my mother, was on once. My Uncle Paul, who was always my favorite uncle. And when I was about 12, 13, 14, he lived in Indianapolis, and we bonded over baseball. So here he is to talk some baseball. Welcome, Uncle Paul.
Hello, Central Indiana.
And Josh, of course, worked at the Plain Dealer and the Kokomo Tribune, journalist, author, all kinds of stuff, and now frequent guest of the Central Indiana Sports Report. Here to talk baseball today. The Major League Baseball season got underway on Thursday. I mean, really got underway. Whatever that other stuff was some nonsense. But Uncle Paul, what were your takeaways from day one? Anything stand out to you?
Yes, I saw on the MLB site they named 8 people who excelled in their debuts, and I thought they had a low bar for excelling, but
who in particular?
The big story to me was Wilyer Abreu for the Red Sox. 2 home runs, 4 RBIs.
Obviously, I'm going to be a homer and talk about my Atlanta Braves. The same old problems that plagued that team. They were 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position yesterday. Chris Sale was at 80 pitches through 3 innings. And so what I'm trying to parlay that into a larger scope conversation is the Braves entered yesterday as the second shortest odds to make the World Series behind the Dodgers. And I just don't understand what Vegas is thinking if they've ever seen the Braves play since 1996. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with that. I'm so excited to get it going. Baseball is my church. My family is a baseball family. Obviously, Tipton has a rich tradition there too. And so the Pirates hat, if I may, today is for maybe the greatest athlete to ever come from Tipton, a guy named Babe Adams. Pitched for the Pirates in the 1908 World Series, was the hero. I think he won over 200 games, but it was a long time ago. But so I'm a Braves fan, but going to rep the home team today, Pittsburgh Pirates.
How did you become a Braves fan, Josh?
Yeah, so that's an interesting story. I get asked that a lot. So when I was a kid, we had the Rabbit Ears. You know, we had
TBS.
We had 6, 8, and 13, and then it was either the Cubs on WGN, and then when we did get cable, it was the Superstation, like you said, TBS. And so it was either watch the Cubs, you know, in the early 90s were absolutely atrocious, obviously, right? And then, you know, the Braves were on every day. So I was like, let's just follow this team. And then I got into it at the right time, about 91, and you know, I've been hooked ever since. And, you know, they've made me cry every year. 2 of those years were tears of joy. So,
Plus the entire Cubs fan base is just awful.
I'm glad someone said it.
Right, Uncle Paul?
No.
Can we all agree that the bleachers are a frat party and not baseball watching?
Oh, I do have a bleacher story, but that's I don't know how apropos that
some
is.
of those might not be G. Yeah.
Tell a bleacher story.
This one's G. This one's G, but it's pretty embarrassing. In 1992, I took my son on a Midwestern ballpark. We went to Cincinnati, both stadiums in Chicago, and the old Detroit stadium. And when we got to Wrigley Field, it had been just after the first Gulf War, and patriotism seemed to be running high. And my son, for some weird reason, he's 15 years old, he begged me to wear my uniform. And I tried to talk about, you know, I fought him for a long time, but he thought people would be buying us drinks or giving us free tickets to the game or something. So I wear my uniform. We're sitting in the bleachers. A guy comes in behind me right before the first inning starts, and he goes, "Look, we're sitting behind Eisenhower." And he called me Eisenhower 422 times during the entire game. And I never have been so ridiculed in my life. So,
Wow.
Thank you for your service, by the way.
We'll start again with you, Paul. What most interests you storylines coming into this season? Are there teams that you expect to be a surprise team, a player maybe to watch? What are some things that you've got your eye on most early in the season?
well, I'm interested to see if the Yankees can patch together any kind of pitching, just from a personal basis. I wonder if anybody in the National League West can compete with the Dodgers. I'm just
An awfully good division.
it's something else. The local paper here ran a story about the Diamondbacks being the $2 million underdogs. We're not used to having huge payrolls, but it's
By the
exactly
way,
half
Paul
of the
lives in
Dodgers.
Phoenix, everybody.
Phoenix, yes, where the Diamondbacks are trying to compete. If opening day is any indication, they're going to have some real trouble.
The National League West might be the toughest division in baseball right now. I mean, because you look at, obviously the Dodgers, they have the small GDP island nation type of payroll, obviously. But, you look at everybody else, the Giants, Verlander, we don't know what he's got left on the tires, but, he's probably going to be better than what they had with whatever they had in the rotation last year. They get a guy like Willie Adames, who for the Brewers was just absolutely a stay, was the mainstay. And even the Diamondbacks signed in Corbin Burns, and they're not that far removed from a pennant. And then so that's, I don't know, that might be the toughest division in baseball. I mean, if you think about it, really.
Need a big year from Corbin Carroll, right, Paul?
Yeah, let's hope so. Yeah, he didn't do much to impress last night, but one game. What the heck?
And we didn't even mention San Diego, who was probably
who made your Braves look bad yesterday?
Sure did, especially the bullpen.
Yeah, if you're dependent on Hector Neris, who didn't do too well with the Cubs last year, I'm not sure that that's a good indication.
Yeah, the Atlanta Braves, year over year, recently they win a lot of games, but me personally, I've been around the game my whole life, and I was spoiled to have Bobby Cox, but Brian Snitker just doesn't push the right buttons enough for me. We win a lot of games, we've won a ring, but why would you go to Hector Neris in that situation? The guy's, he's in the back end of his career, and that's the thing about the Braves bullpen. There's a ton of guys. They're going to go out there and have devastating stuff. That was just a head scratcher. I know they have, so the Braves, they start the season at San Diego and at the Dodgers. So that's a tough 7-game stretch to start the year. And maybe that played into it, but it's just like, please push the right buttons.
And as a Reds fan, you don't want to be talking about the bullpen today, but that's another division that's not very good, but should be very competitive. Looks like 5 teams that are all pretty even.
Yeah. Let's start with the Cubs. I mean, they lost Bellinger to free agency, but I feel like the Kyle Tucker signing was huge. The Imanaga is coming back. They got Suzuki back. And then there's a couple of young guys for the Cubs too. A guy named Pete Crow Armstrong. I saw him play in Pittsburgh last summer, and that guy is one of the better defensive center fielders that I've seen in recent memory, and he's really young. Fun fact about him: his mom was, I believe, the mom in the movie Little Big League, where the kid owns the Minnesota Twins. Yeah, Pete Crow Armstrong's mom was the mom in that movie.
Is that right?
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah,
wow.
Obviously the Brewers, they're gonna, they won the division last year, and they're gonna have something to say. But I think it starts with the Cubs right now.
Pete Crow Armstrong did something yesterday that was pivotal in the whole game. It's the 5th inning, 2 outs. Runners on first and second. He's on first. Ground ball to the shortstop, Geraldo Perdomo. He tried to get the force out at second, and he just underestimated how fast Crow Armstrong was. And he beat the throw. So now you've got the bases loaded, and there's a 3-run RBI double. Key to the whole game, and it would have been almost anybody else. He completely underestimated how fast that guy was. So it was like a little thing, but it was a huge difference in the game.
Yeah,
That's what baseball's about.
He's a 5-tool guy, Pete Crow Armstrong. He's an automatic stolen base with the way they've redone the pitching rules and the bags, and yeah, he's the real deal. And if he stays healthy, he's going to be a cornerstone in the outfield for them.
Yeah, I think any of those, almost anybody in the NL Central could win that division this year.
But it's going to be your Cincinnati Redlegs, just so everybody knows.
Well,
they
they're
are
gonna have to find somebody in the ninth inning with a lead to pitch.
Yeah, the bullpen was supposed to be a strength of the team, so we'll see. Jabot was pretty good last year. That was not good on Thursday.
When's Diaz coming back?
I'm not sure, and also he wasn't very good in the second half of last year. Maybe that was the injury. Yeah, that should be a good bullpen in the long run. That's why I'm not too concerned after yesterday. The starting pitching was amazing. Hunter Green
looked great.
Looks amazing. The lineup is going to be productive with De La Cruz and McLean in the middle of it. So I'm not too concerned about that. I think they win 88 to 90 games. The question is anybody else in the division better than that?
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to what version of the Cubs comes out. I think that the Cubs fans themselves were over the moon about the Craig Counsell hire, and he didn't come in and do any better than the guy before him, Ross. But I think that they have all the pieces right now. But you can't count the Brewers out for whatever reason. They continue to push towards the front of that division. But I think that with the Reds, bringing in a guy like Terry Francona was the perfect hire. He's been around, won some rings, and everywhere he's been, they've won. And I think that the Reds, obviously with Hunter Green, and they've got another few young guys that are coming up. I mean, you would be remiss to not talk about Ellie De La Cruz, who's, for me, one of the more exciting guys. I think the Gavin Lux signing was a big deal. I think that they might surprise some people, but you're right. If they can get the back end of that bullpen figured out, they could be trouble when we get on into the dog days of summer.
So I guess since we've done the National League West and National League Central, and by the way, you guys have predictions? You say you Cubs in the Central, Dodgers in the West. Is Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you can pick anybody else with the Dodgers right now with that $600 gajillion payroll.
Anybody be an idiot not to pick the Dodgers.
And in the Central, who do you think wins that?
I'll defer to your wisdom on the Reds.
I don't think the Reds are there yet. I'm gonna pick the Cubs just for fun.
All right, let's go to the East, and that should be a really good division. Earlier this week, I picked the Phillies to be the surprise National League champion just because the Dodgers is just boring. I like the Phillies, the Braves. That should be a pretty good division. And again, I think there are not a lot of bad teams in the National League.
I think that the balance of power has shifted to the National League for sure. And when you look at the National League East, outside of the Marlins, I mean, even those other teams, and the Nationals are still a little bit away. But I think when you look at what the Mets did in the offseason, bringing in Soto, huge payroll, but it was what surprised I marvel at the Mets about is how they just dumped their entire roster, and then 1 year later, they're right there with the chance to win the National League. And so you can't count them out. I think it runs through Philly. I think that some of the guys on the Phillies roster offensively, those guys are getting a little older. But, when you have Zach Wheeler, and I don't know that they get enough credit, but the Phillies bullpen is just nasty. And but for me, Vegas likes Atlanta. I wish I could agree with them right now. I think that they might be a wild card team again. They lost, losing Max Fried, I feel like was a big deal, but they're getting Strider back. Acuna is going to be healthy. They didn't make a ton of splash moves in the offseason, but I feel like bringing in Profar and Marisnik was a big deal. And for the Braves, I don't know why they've been so slow on this, but they've got 4 guys in the minors that could pitch in the major leagues, and I would like to see them go out and get another piece, but that's not how they operate. They always seem to get guys under market value to sign. I think their whole roster is that way, really. And I can see them winning 90 plus games, but they got to figure out that you can't. When you get to the playoffs, you can't go 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position and expect to win a series. And that's the big problem for them right now. So I'm with you. I think the Phillies, until further notice, are going to be the team that's going to set the pace in the National League East.
I think the Braves will win the division. And I don't think the Mets are going to be as good as Soto can make them. I think the Mets have some pitching problems. If Clay Holmes is the opening day starter, he did very well yesterday, but that seems like they're a little thin. What say you?
Yeah, I'm going to take the Phillies. I think it's close. Again, I think the Dodgers are probably half a level ahead of everybody right now, but Padres, Diamondbacks, Braves, Phillies, I think maybe a team or two in the Central, maybe not really good contenders, a lot of good contenders in the National League. And again, I would probably take the Dodgers if I was being honest, but I'm going to take the Phillies because it's a little more interesting.
Hmm.
So I just think all those teams seem to be about even.
When you look at the Dodgers, obviously they made a lot of splashes in the offseason. And I think for them though, it seems kind of an easy thing to go to, but especially with their pitching staff in recent years, they've had trouble keeping those guys healthy. And if they can't do that, especially with all the the money that they've spent, and I think that I heard Michelle talking about this, Michelle Garman, the other day. She was talking about how they've underachieved for what they've had talent wise with Dave Roberts, and I feel like in some regards, even though they won a couple World Series, that's been the case in a lot of years. So I think that even though that looks like a dream team on paper, there are ways that you could beat them, and I think they're the team to beat in the league this year. But I don't think that they are quite as invincible like the '96 Bulls, for example. They could. They're there for the taking, and that's why they play the game in baseball. I mean, you see even the best teams, they lose 35% of their games, and you have to go out and still do it in between the lines. And I think that there are a lot of other teams in the National League that have some veteran pieces that could give them a run in a 7-game series.
Paul, do you think they're inevitable, or do you feel like Josh does?
I think pretty doggone close. I'm not. I'm not too sure they're not going to win 120 games this year. Although I hear Josh saying every team loses 35% of their games, but I don't know if they stay healthy. It's going to be hard to stop them. I think.
I think that's a valid way to feel about it. I mean, you look at their lineup. Where are the outs at? Especially if you get Shohei Ohtani back on the mound too. Yeah, they're scary good, but if I was a manager, I wouldn't want my team to go in there and feel that way. I would tell them, hey, they put their pants on the same way we do. They button their shirts the same way we do. Let's go play ball.
Would you be reluctant to throw Ohtani at all? I would be. I'd be very nervous about putting him on the mound under any situation. You have a good team. You don't really need him. Might be a fan draw, but if I were the manager there, I think I would be very reluctant to see him ever take the mound.
I think that's a genuine concern. I also think it is a big roll of the dice when you do that, but I'm just going off of what I've seen, and they have him throwing. I don't know when he'll be game ready, but I think that their plan is to, even if it's as a reliever maybe or something, I think he's in their plans to eat some innings, at least in some regards. So I agree with you. If he is as prolific with the bat as he is, why even risk it? Because what you're looking at is maybe another torn elbow or shoulder, and then you can't hit either. It is definitely a gamble, but I think when they paid him $700 million, that was the idea.
Exactly.
You're getting that money because you can do both. You're a unicorn, unlike we've ever seen. So I think that they might straddle that fence of caution and also getting their money's worth.
Before we move to the American League, we have a question that's very near and dear to my heart for you guys. Since 1970, who has had the greatest career? I don't want to hear about Ohtani and, who is the greatest player since 1970? Is it Barry Bonds or Ricky Henderson? This is going to change my opinion of you if you get the answer wrong.
Go ahead, Paul. I mean, I was 14 years in the making when 1970 rolled around, so I might have to.
Okay, well, here's what I'm going to say. I learned this last night. There the difference between Ricky Henderson and I think Lou Brock is number 2 on the list. Is that right, Greg?
Yes.
Stolen bases, yeah.
The difference between the number of stolen bases in the career from Ricky Henderson to Lou Brock is the same as the difference between Lou Brock and the 42nd guy on the list.
Wow.
So that's quite impressive. But my answer is going to be Barry Bonds.
Yeah, I just think Ricky Henderson affected the game in a way that Barry Bonds couldn't, because they could walk him so easily and you couldn't. And he has the record for runs scored all time. To me, that's the probably the number one stat that there is to me judging a baseball player, because the goal is to score runs.
Yeah, I think I am not a fan of Barry Bonds. For obvious reasons. I mean, obviously, the back of his baseball card is undeniable. But I agree. If I had to choose between those two, it would be Ricky Henderson. The funny thing about Ricky Henderson is someone was reciting John 3:16 to him in the locker room, and he said, "I don't know that guy, but Ricky hits higher than 3:16." And but Ricky Henderson is just he walked to the beat of his own drum. I mean, like it was magical to watch him run the bases. And I was a very young kid when he was at the end of his prime, but I pride myself on being a historian in baseball. But Ricky Henderson had a 71 WAR in the 80s, which is unbelievable. But when you go back if you're going to go back to the 70s, I think that we have to give an honorable mention to Johnny Bench. Obviously a catcher, but when you look at how much time he spent behind the plate, how he also impacted the game offensively, defensive runs saved, I think that you have to at least give him a mention.
I was just trying to exclude Willie Mays, because the answer, if you went any further back, would be Willie Mays.
Okay.
Right, Paul?
Correct.
Anyway, I just wanted to see where you guys stood. You are both still welcome on the podcast.
Thank you. I will tell you that I found out last night that Barry Bonds had more intentional walks in his career than the franchise of the Tampa Bay Rays has in its history combined.
That's amazing.
That's just nuts. Some of the stats for Barry Bonds. And that's what made me think of it, is I saw something yesterday with some of the Barry Bonds stats, and I was like, I still think Ricky Henderson. But
Chipper Jones said Barry Bonds this past week.
That might have been exactly what I was.
Oh, that's what you were thinking.
I think that's exactly what I heard.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He didn't hesitate.
No, he didn't.
He did play in the National League. I grant you that.
And he also didn't play with Ricky Henderson when Ricky Henderson was his best, which was
Correct.
In the 80s and early 90s.
I think that Chipper Jones' opinion holds a little bit of weight, considering he's probably one of the 5 best switch hitters of all time. Won an MVP. Obviously, I'm biased because he's, I wore number 10 as a kid because of him. But when you separate Barry Bonds, the person, from the baseball player, it becomes a lot easier to put him up there near the top.
Paul and I saw Chipper Jones hit a game-winning home run in Atlanta one Sunday afternoon long ago. You recall that?
I do indeed.
I believe it was the bottom of the 8th. He hit the home run, and then John Rocker came in and closed the game.
Correct.
And Paul said I said, well, we had a lot of fun, and he said, it's not a fun day when the Braves win.
Don't tell Josh I said that.
I just did.
You were on mute. What?
All right, Paul. Do the Yankees have enough pitching to compete for the pennant in the American League?
I don't believe so. No.
But the lineup's awfully good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It would have been something if Soto had come back, but apparently they didn't have Dodger money to do that. So
yeah, for the Yankees, they don't have the George Steinbrenner blank check comfort anymore. But I think that throwing Carlos Rodon to start the season was more of who was the freshest off of spring training than anything else. I think that Max Fried in a new league is going to is obviously missing Garrett Cole. I mean, that's undeniable. But I think Max Fried will come in and he will really fill a spot that they were going to have. Even though Marcus Stroman, has bounced around a little bit, he's still going to give you quality innings. I like what they have there. You look at their other guys. Don't know much about Carlos Carrasco, other than he's been in the league for a while. But I think you might be right that with the loss of Garrett Cole, that back end of their starting rotation is going to give up some runs, and that could be a problem for them, especially in a division where the Red Sox got a lot better. The Orioles are coming. They were up and coming, but now they're full on coming, and they have a ton of talent in that organization. So, the Yankees, their stay at the top of the division might have been short-lived because of the injuries.
Who do you think will have a better year, Max Fried or Strider for the Braves?
I'm going to say Fried just because, Strider's, I think he's on his second or third Tommy John. And obviously Strider, when he's dialed in, he's unhittable most of the time. And he walks a lot of guys, more so than you would like to see from your average guy. But I think that if I had to pick right now, it would be Max Fried just because he's spent very little time on the disabled list. He's going to give you, close to 200 innings and the lefty with nasty stuff. I mean, in the playoffs in 2021, you saw him, especially in the World Series, just when the chips are down, he's the guy, much like Tom Glavine was in 1995 for the Braves.
So you see a 3-team race there, Yankees, Red Sox, and Orioles then?
I do, and I think when you look at the Red Sox, the addition of Crochet from the White Sox and then bringing in Alex Bregman, who's, he hit in Houston off the Crawford boxes. Now he has the Green Monster, and he's gonna be an upgrade at third base. Rafael Devers is probably going to DH for them now, but Rafael Devers was awful defensively. And I think that the Red Sox, they're going to be much improved. I think that right now probably Baltimore's the team that it's theirs to lose. But it's going to I can see both wild cards coming out of the East.
So Josh has the Orioles. Paul, do you agree?
No, I hate to say this, but I just think the Red Sox have upgraded too much.
And I'll take the Yankees to make it 3 different.
Okay, excellent. All right.
And if either of those 3 win it, I don't think it's going to be a surprise to many people.
Yeah, if Tampa wins it, I think it'll be a surprise. But you're right, those 3. Although they've done that in the past, I'll say that. Where you expect nothing from Tampa, and they come from out of nowhere.
They exceed expectations of mine every year.
Yeah, they seem to scrounge up those crumbs and put out a 90-win team more years than not. So
let's move from the East to a very interesting Central. I have no idea what to expect in the Central. Kansas City, Detroit, Minnesota, they all seem like mysteries to me.
What is it about the Central? The National League and the American League all seem like they're evenly matched and no front runners at all.
It's a difficult one because I think it's more so than the National League Central. You look at the AL Central, you look at Cleveland, Detroit, Kansas City, and Minnesota, and it's really a coin flip for me right now. When you look at Detroit with Scooball, and they've got some young guys too, but I mean, look at Kansas City. It starts with Bobby Witt Jr., but with guys like Michael Wacha going out there, I really love what we're seeing in the AL Central because it felt like in the last 15 years or so, the AL Central was the doormat of the major leagues. But now you got 4 teams that are going to give you a problem, and Kansas City was right there with the Yankees last year in the playoffs. It's hard for me to pick a team right now. I'm not really sure. I have to think about it for a second.
Yeah, really, 4 teams, it seems wide open. Maybe even a little better than the National League Central, Paul.
That's possible, yes. I liked what I saw from the Tigers yesterday, even though they lost.
I think for the Cleveland, Stephen Vogt went in there and did an amazing job in his first season. But I think for them, losing Josh Naylor to free agency, did he go to Arizona too?
Correct.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a huge piece out of them. He carried them in the playoffs when they could, and Stephen Kwan, obviously one of the better contact hitters. They have Carlos Santana there too. Jose Ramirez, obviously, but for me, I don't think that Cleveland has the pitching, at least on paper, to do what Detroit and Kansas City are going to be able to do.
I'll go with the Tigers, although Josh makes a great case for the Royals too.
I'm going to say that the Tigers and the Royals end up tied in the standings at the end of the year. They play a one-game playoff, and Schoolball goes out and Detroit wins it.
That's bold.
All right, I'll take Kansas City, I guess, but does Minnesota have a chance in this, you think, or is it a 3-team race?
I always go in saying no, but then they always end up in the playoffs somehow. So, when it comes to them, go ahead, Paul.
Oh, just they really disappointed. I think anybody who was watching last year, they just really folded their tents in the last 2 months, and
They really did.
you hate to judge any team by one game, but yesterday wasn't real impressive either.
For Minnesota, none of their pitchers really scare you, but for me, when it comes to their offense, the two guys that they rely on the most, Correa and Buxton, they have always struggled to stay healthy. And I think that for Minnesota to be able to be in position to compete in that division, those guys are going to have really good years, and you can't count on them to stay in the lineup, 5 days out of 7. So I think right now, Minnesota's probably trending in the wrong direction, especially when you have the young talent coming up through the other systems in Detroit and Kansas City right now.
And the West should be very interesting too.
A lot of people, I've been listening and reading, and from what I've read, now the AL West for me is not a division that I follow very closely, but I think that I like Ron Washington in LA. I like that guy. I wish that he would have been the manager in Atlanta and not Brian Snedeker, but here we are. Houston it's run through them, for the last few years, but a lot of people that understand baseball are saying that Seattle has one of the top 3 or 4 rotations in baseball. This doesn't seem like a huge signing, but for me it is. A guy like Rowdy Tellez, a guy who's obviously he's 6'7", 300 pounds, but he hits for a pretty high. His OPS is pretty high for a guy his size. He's a great locker room guy. He was a great locker room guy for Pittsburgh last year. I wouldn't be surprised to see Seattle take that division, but Texas is only 2 years removed from a World Series championship, and if they can get guys like Jacob deGrom and Kumar Rocker to either get healthy and do what they might be able to do with with the young offensive pieces that they have, and a guy like Corey Seager, Texas could be right there too. So I think it's a 2-horse race, maybe even 3 with Houston, Seattle, and Texas.
I see 2 of your teams, Josh, or 2 of those teams, the Rangers and the Astros. Seattle talked me out of in any great enthusiasm last year. Just if there was a team that scored fewer runs than the Mariners last year, I'd like to know who that team was. I'm pretty sure they must have been last. So they couldn't hit. Of course, Severino is a good pitcher, but I just don't see him hitting enough to win, no matter how good that pitching is. So I would call it a 2-team race, and I think if Jacob deGrom can stay healthy, then I'd lean towards the Rangers.
So just looking at this, hang on a second.
Oh, are you checking me?
Bottom. Oh, it only shows me the top 25, but the Mariners were 21st in runs
Oh,
last year.
wow.
So they weren't
way off.
They weren't as paltry as some, but I mean, you rank 21st in runs scored, you can't expect to.
Well, and at the All-Star break, they were in first place. They looked like they were in the driver's seat there last year. So I don't know.
I was starting to think they were going to be one of the teams to beat, and they just were not good down the stretch. Same with the Rangers.
Yes, the Rangers folded tenths too. Yeah.
And nobody wants Houston winning that thing.
I think it would be good for baseball to. It'd be great to have the Mariners win for baseball, but
it's going to be a long time for me to forgive Houston for the trash can banging incident. And I obviously wanted to see Dusty Baker win a ring because that guy's done everything in this league. And, the 2002 Giants let him down in the World Series. The Angels beat them there. But, so I was like, when the Braves were out, let's get Dusty his ring. But I can't with a good conscience root for Houston for the foreseeable future. That was an egregious for me, ranked up there with the Black Sox scandal, and for them to just sweep it under the rug, let them keep the ring, ship the manager out, and he got another job, and then the guy who seemed to be the mastermind of it is now the manager of the Red Sox. It's just that whole situation stunk to me, and credibility in the game and respecting the game. I come from a family where that's a paramount thing, and Houston just makes me sick. But that, like, the cheating part, nah, can't do it.
Well said, Josh. Amen.
I was a little torn. I wanted the Astros to lose for sure, but Dusty Baker, as bad as he is as a game decision manager, is one of the best people in the game and is a very good clubhouse manager from what everybody says. And as poor as he is at decision-making in game, that is a big part of managing, and he deserved to get a World Series championship as much as I hated seeing the Astros win that.
The thing I like, obviously Dusty Baker, we could talk Hall of Fame, all the way around. But the thing I like about him most is that he was on deck when the greatest player of all time, Hank Aaron, hit his 715th home run.
That's the best thing he accomplished in his whole career.
He rode coattails all the way to the Hall of Fame, my brother.
Okay, who caught the ball that he hit, Josh?
Tom House.
Nice job. Way to go.
And Craig Sager was on the field.
And you know the date, too.
I don't. I can't.
April 8th. April 8th.
They had he tied the record in Cincinnati the series before, correct?
That's right, he did.
And it was against the Dodgers, so that's even better.
Yep. Couldn't not have been a better scenario.
All right, guys, last thing. I need World Series predictions. I have already made a really bad pick with the Phillies over the Yankees. It's just so – I've refused to take the Dodgers because it's so obvious.
Our challenge is to pick a World Series winner that's not the Dodgers.
If you do pick the Dodgers, I want you to pick an alternate scenario as well. How about that?
Okay, all right.
So I'm going to take the Phillies over the Yankees, but I don't love the pick. I think it's just so wide open except for the Dodgers.
I'm going to pick somebody that's not the...
We already know you're picking the Dodgers, but...
Yes, okay. If you're forcing me to take somebody who's not the... I'll go with a surprise pick, and I'll go with the Diamondbacks getting back to the World Series.
I like it.
The Diamondbacks were Will Rutherford's prediction to win the whole thing, so it's 50% of our baseball panel here is taking the Dodgers.
I thought the great tragedy last year from a Diamondbacks point of view was they finished one game out of making the playoffs, but I just thought they match up better against the Dodgers than even the Padres did, and the Padres took the Dodgers down to the last game too. So, yeah, that's as long as you give me that, I'll go with the Diamondbacks over the Texas Rangers for a revenge from 2 years ago.
But you really believe it'll be the Dodgers over the Rangers?
Yeah, sadly I do. Yes, exactly.
All right. And Josh.
So everybody turn the lights out. Get your lights on your phone. We're doing the tomahawk chop. We're doing the tomahawk chop today. The Atlanta Braves are going to figure it out. Matt Olson's going to remember how to hit. Brian Steger's going to push the buttons. Our bullpen's going to get it figured out. Acuna's going to stay healthy. The Braves make another magical run and shock everybody and win the World Series. And I hope that I have jinxed them in a negative way to make that come to fruition. But the only thing keeping me alive is watching them underachieve.
You sure changed your tune there from the guy who was so discouraged about yesterday's game.
Well, let's say that it's not the Braves. What's the World Series?
Let's go.
You just don't want to pick the Dodgers either, do you?
I mean, I can't. I want to throw up in my mouth, honestly. When I do that. Let's go. I can't pick an American League team. No way. So let's go. And I can't pick the Phillies. That's
You're eliminating every team.
It's not a starter. Let's go. Let's just go something crazy. San Francisco Giants. They're gonna figure it out.
And your American League champion?
Does it really matter?
Okay.
Wow.
I mean, no, I'm sorry. I could see Boston figuring it out, man. Like Kevin Millar, I was listening to him the other day. He's obviously a Boston homer, but he's really high on what they've done in the offseason, and he's pretty pragmatic about the Red Sox. But he's really high on them. They're not really high on anybody's list, but I think that there's something magical about Fenway in the fall, and I could see the Red Sox, riding a wave to the World Series.
Yeah. And producer Susie says the Reds are going to win it all. Nothing else matters. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it. Really good to see you again, Josh. Always love talking to you, Uncle Paul.
Thanks, guys. Good meeting you, Josh.
Thank you so much to Josh Sigler for joining the Central Indiana Sports Report once again. Always love having him. And to my Uncle Paul Tipton, one of my very favorite people on the face of the earth, for joining the Central Indiana Sports Report for the first time. Hope he makes it a regular thing. Love talking baseball with Uncle Paul. And thank you for listening. If you're interested in the Central Indiana Sports Report continuing to grow and thrive, please share these segments with your friends and family. The Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media, and I love Susie.